What's up, Marathon? I'm John Kissick, host of the podcast show all about you, the citizens of Marathon. Today, we're on the second part of a third-part series talking all about the Florida Keys Marine Sanctuary. So today, we're going to talk about the need of use in some of these proposed areas. So we have a past president of the Florida Keys Commercial Fishing Association who will be discussing the proposed restrictions, the need of the sanctuary, and the need to work together for the final draft of the proposal. So let's learn something together about the commercial side of the proposal and its impact on the industry. So let's welcome Gary Nichols. All right, Gary Nichols, so thanks for coming on the show. Could you tell us a little bit about your background and your role with the different organizations?
I'm Gary Nichols. We live in Lower Matacumbe. We've had a fish house on Conch Key for a little over 30 years. My wife and I started our business 47 years ago when she was 15. I was 16. Mm-hmm. And we have one of the largest spiny lobster businesses and one of the largest stone crab businesses in the United States. Fish a lot of gear. Been doing this a long time. Try to put something back into our industry, which is the reason why I've been involved and our family's been involved in the Organized Fishermen of Florida and Florida Keys Commercial Fishermen. I've been president of both organizations, and I'm still involved and still go to meetings, and you have to give back a little bit, just like a farmer puts seeds. We have to put back into our industry so that we can receive, mainly the things we're fighting. We're fighting a lot of water quality issues, so. But you got to put back a little bit, so you just got to stay involved in what you do for a living, no matter what it is.
Right. Part of the associations, they are trying to work to minimize the negative impact of lots of regulations. And
ironically, our organizations, both bylaws, are that we preserve and protect the natural resources of the state of Florida. It's real important. I have children and grandchildren, and my daughters, my son-in-laws, all commercial fish. They work with us. My daughter's been running my lobster boat for about 20 years. My other daughter runs the business part. My son-in-law, he's the captain and the mates. And my other son-in-law has his own commercial fishing business. So it's a family business. And we want to be able to continue a family business. So it's important that we keep the resources intact, strong. And we have the most highly regulated fishing industry with the lobster and stone crab fisheries are the most highly regulated in the world. And we're a big part of that with limited entry. We have the first fisherman-derived limited entry system in the United States, which was the Spiny lobster certificate program that we implemented back in the 80s.
Oh, that's interesting. So then also part of the organization, they need to make sure that industry is sustainable. So you work towards not overfishing different species and.
Absolutely, we're involved with Florida, the Marine Fisheries Commission. I'm on the advisory council for spiny lobster with the South Atlantic, and different fishermen in our organizations are involved in on the different council levels, from the ecosystem management to the sanctuary panels. I've been on the Joint Action Group for Water Quality, which is something I believe wholeheartedly. We've been fighting water quality issues for years, and we keep fighting, but we don't seem to keep winning. We just keep going a little bbit backwards and more backwards, but that's another story for another time, I guess.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the water quality issue. So that's most of the water quality issues down here come all the way up from mid-Florida, from the cattle farming and from the sugar farms and all the runoff that goes into the waterway, which we all saw recently, the algae blooms. Can you expand upon that a little?
Well, back in 20 years ago, when we had the Joint Action Group for Water Quality, one of our biggest issues was the Shark River and getting fresh water back. We were getting nitrates and phosphates coming out of the Shark River and the Turner River basins, and all of that was mixing with the ocean water, and it causes the algae blooms, and it's caused all kinds of problems. It caused the sponges to die off, and if you've lived in the Keys for a long time, the corals are in horrible shape. The seagrasses are in horrible shape. And then the hurricane comes along, Irma, and it just devastated us. It messed up a lot more habitat inshore. It also has caused a real disruption in our being able to make a living with the lobster and stone crab business, because the lobster larvae was displaced. The stone crabs, obviously, we ended up having a bad crab season last year. That had a lot to do with, we had major algae blooms. We had the red tide, which was, we normally never see the red tide come so far south down here into the Keys. So we've had some things that we've never had to deal with. We're also having this issue with this. If you believe in global warming, if you have been outside in the Florida Keys in the last few weeks, you might start believing a little bit more, because our islands seem to be sinking underwater. We've had what they call a king tide, which you started hearing that a few years ago, but now that we've actually had a king tide running for over a month, and the water's just coming right up on across the culverts, over the roads, 3 foot of water to wade into the fish house at times, and that's a little bit scary stuff. I mean, so. You know, we have to start addressing some of these things one thing at a time. It's like taking one step at a time, and you know, that's kind of what, we're getting hit by a lot of things, and we're, mainly right now we're all trying to make a living. You know, our industry got devastated by the Hurricane Irma. I lost over 5,000 of my lobster traps were totally destroyed. My fish house was half of it washed out to sea, the other half was just smashed. Docks, so on and so forth. But we've all been real resilient. We're building and getting ourselves back together, and we're making a living. But it's been a struggle.
Yes. Okay. Which we're going to talk about is about the marine sanctuary proposal, and then everybody voted it down in Florida Keys, and then the state and the federal government, they implemented the program anyway. So I'm sure that's why a lot of people are all.
Well, the marine sanctuary idea is a really great idea. You know, we need to protect our coral reefs in particular. I mean, it's one of a kind, and it's a beautiful thing. I love to dive, and I love, our children, my wife, and family, and everybody who comes to the Keys. That's what they come here for. And it's important that we protect those corals and the reefs and the grasses and so on and so forth. And our industry was involved incredibly. We worked in conjunction with a marine sanctuary to show spots that needed to be protected, because we're on the water every day, so obviously we see those spots. And we also worked on with the spas. We worked with Florida Keys Commercial Fishermen OFF in the origination of the sanctuary. And this particular time, what seems to be missing on this particular go-round, 5 years ago we addressed these same topics in some of these closed areas, and they took them off the table. There was a reason they took them off the table. It seems like sometimes people have to do things to justify their jobs, because they're getting paid to, obviously, some are getting paid, I think, in good faith. A lot of people are thinking they're doing the right thing, but at the same time, a lot of those small spas that they show, the little coral patches that they're trying to close, like around Delta, and some of those where they're growing out corals, some of the deep part of the channel where they have a couple of places. I'm basically going to talk about mainly from, say, Bay of Honda to Alligator Light, because that's the area that I fish my traps. That's the area I'm very, very familiar with, because I'm on the water mostly 7 days a week most of the season. And if I was, I don't really want to talk on somebody else's area. I can talk about where I live and what I do, and some of these areas are just ludicrous that they're presenting. And it's totally, it's kind of like somebody went and pinned the tail on the donkey and stuck it on the wall, and somebody or closed their eyes and threw a dart at a chart and wanted to close an area. What should have happened, the sanctuary people should have gotten with the commercial fishing industry and the recreational industry, got on the boats, went for boat rides, and actually on nice days looked at bottom and habitat, and we could have actually found a little bit better areas that would have accomplished some of the things that they want to. It wouldn't have been so impactful. You got to realize we have over 26% of our traps just basically from Marathon to Lower Matacumbe. So there's a lot of traps. When you get up into the Lower Matacumbe area down to Long Key, which is the area that I fish out of Conch Key there, you have Everglades National Park only 1.5 miles out into the bay. Then you got deep water only 3 miles out. You're over the edge of the reef. So you're already condensed into a very small area to commercial fish for lobsters, and you have 26% of the traps in those areas. So you can see if you start cutting out giant broad areas, and I'm mainly want to talk about the area that they're trying to close. It's from Long Key Bridge to basically Channel 5 from the shoreline all the way to the reef, and that's just totally the most crazy place in the world to pick to close.
Okay.
And we talked about this 5 years ago. They took it off the table, and they said they made a mistake. They shouldn't have ever done this. Come back 5 years later, here we are again talking about the same thing, which is ludicrous. This has the least amount of habitat to protect anywhere in the Keys. I mean, bar none. I've been diving, fishing all my life. There's very little inshore corals. Along Lower Matacumbe, there's beautiful hard corals right along the shoreline. You have habitat for the conch shells. You have all kinds of seagrasses. You have soft corals, hard corals. You have coral patches within a mile of the shoreline, and you go up all the way to Alamorada, you have the same thing. But when you get right off of Long Key State Park, there's really very little. And even going out into the channel, you have mostly sand runs. You have small patch reefs, but not very much of it, and not much of the high-profile corals. So what are we doing this for? Just because there's a park there, supposedly, a state park. And then there's one little preservation zone up there that's already closed for a spa, and that's fine, up off Tennessee Reef. So we can find a lot better spots. And I talked to Sarah from the National Marine Fisheries Service, from NOAA there, and she seems very, very nice, and she seems very receptive. She wants to get on the boat with me, and if it isn't with me, it could be somebody else, and we're going to go for some boat rides and actually look at some of this stuff because she's new to the job, and it was nice that she seemed very receptive to us talking to her. But what I don't understand is why, before this all got on paper and got everybody in a stressed out situation, we didn't sit down with the people and actually help draw out some areas or help them identify areas that we can see stress, because we're on the waters, I mean, literally 7 days a week.
Sure.
They can draw from us, the charter boat captains, the dive captains, a lot of industry that we could help and actually identify some areas that we could be of help instead of just let's go
Pick it anyway.
have everybody in the world just go bananas, because this, I mean, basically they have an idle-only zone where we have to run through. How am I going to get to my traps from Conch Key going up to Alligator Light without running through a zone? And then in the park, you can see it's only a mile from Long Key to the park there. So
it's funny how it just goes right for the park straight out.
yeah, that's just the most ludicrous place. And some of the areas here, if they're small areas, is one thing. They have a lot of this bayside flats. That's nice that they're going to protect some of the flats. They should protect them. But I hope that actually, unfortunately, you have the yin-yangs that don't know the waters or don't know how to read a chart or don't have a plotter that are going to run aground anyway, but which is kind of a sad thing. But protecting some of these bayside things that I see here off Channel Key and whatnot is good. But we trap around a lot of these flats. We don't get up in the shallow water. We're in like 5 foot of water. So I did talk to the sanctuary people, and it seems like they're going to accommodate that and make them small. Going to fine tune it and make them small. So I don't think we have a lot of heartburn from the bay stuff. Protecting these little spas like Delta and Turtle Shoal, some of that is good, as long as, like I said, every little bit that somebody takes from us, we have already got a giant area. I mean, look at the park; it's a gigantic area closed already. Penny Camp's a giant area closed already. Tortugas area is a big closed area. You have a lot of population in that middle part of the Keys here, and it's just anyway.
Well, kind of what I like is that I guess the Blue Star program they're offering that does educate some of these people that come down. I guess when they go out on the cattle boats and so on, and they're trying to come up with some type of literature to educate people when they come, bring their boat down from Miami, how to keep, get them the information so they're not driving through the seagrass beds. I talked with Sarah about that, and they're going to have an app, and I guess it's getting people to know there's an app and that there are areas you can't go in. So I think that part of the program's good. Do you agree about with that, or the education?
Education is paramount. People need to have, people in general before they get on a boat need to have some. I mean, back in the old days, we actually had power squadron classes we would have to do. I mean, or we have captain's licenses or whatever. But the everyday, the general public probably ought to have some kind of a program that at least they could pass before they just jump on, are able to even jump in a boat, even if it's a small class, to how to use a plotter, so on and so forth. But, because our keys are fragile, and anything we can do to protect our habitat is there's nothing you could say against that.
Right.
And it's the same thing, we just love things to death. I mean, the keys are just being, deluged with people. We've got a little bit of a control, I think, with having the sewer treatment plants now.
Right.
With some of the water quality problems, it's got to help. But education is the key to everything, and preserving some of these areas. I really didn't see any big heartburn in most of the areas. There's just a couple of glaring things that kind of show up at us. And as commercial fishermen, we really can't afford to give up too much in the middle part of the Keys, the part that you're talking about from Lower Matacumbe to Marathon. There just isn't a lot of area for us to fish to start with, and to just do an experiment it's not really the best place to do that. There's a lot better places. I think as far as coral, if you're going to protect a lot of coral areas, if you're right off Lower Matacumbe, there's probably a lot better place to draw that little line. Same thing off of Alamorada. There's some really nice coral spots that are already preserved, like Chica and whatnot. And there's some nice places off Lower Matacumbe, but we just need to sit down with the sanctuary and maybe work on some alternatives.
Yeah, that's good. I guess that's the most important thing. They need to see what they're actually trying to protect and not, and what their goal is to preserve the reefs. But if there's nothing to preserve, like up in Key Largo, the one reef they want to have a no anchor zone is already dead, and it's already been determined it's not going to ever come back. So to have a no anchor zone there really doesn't make a lot of sense. But
yeah, it's tough. I mean, after the Hurricane Delta is kind of a good example. It turned into a rubble bottom there. It just got devastated from the hurricane. And unfortunately, we're just all over the Caribbean, the corals are just really under duress. And I don't know what the answer is to that down the road, but our children and our children's children are gonna unfortunately, if we don't do something here or try to do the best we can to save what we do have, it's it's not going to be a real pleasant thing, and we're going to lose. And the tourism industry, the commercial fishing industry, the habitat is key to us. Being able to produce the lobsters and the stone crabs and everything. So,
with like the seagrass beds, the lobsters spawn in the seagrass bed, or is that more the fish and stuff?
The lobsters actually spawn out on the reefs during they go out to the reef to spawn, and then the larvae goes around in a gyra around the Gulf Stream, and then that larvae comes back and settles out in the Caribbean, all the way around the whole entire Caribbean, from Cuba, Nicaragua, all the way down the Caribbean basin, and then we get back a certain amount of the recruitment. And we also recruit from other places. Our recruitment doesn't actually mostly come from the Keys, even though we protect our spawning stock tremendously well. We don't really harvest our spawning stock. So that's another issue in itself, that we have to really try to educate the rest of the Caribbean and all the other users of our resource, how important it is to protect their lobsters down in the third world countries. And we've been working on that as well, for recruitment in particular. So what we do have, whatever comes here, we have to be really careful and try to keep as many of them as we can and get them to grow up and be able to harvest them.
Great, because I've been told that the reefs make up only 1% of the entire ocean, but 50% of sea life is supported off the reefs. So, and I guess it all trickles down from the microorganisms on up to the big fish. So if you don't protect the small corals, you're not going to have the small fish and then the big fish and so on.
Absolutely. And it's we did a lot of diving over in Indonesia and over in the Fiji, Tuataki, Tonga, over in the Society Islands and stuff. And it's amazing to see the difference over in the South Pacific versus the corals and the healthiness of the corals and things coming back here to the United States and even diving over in the Bahamas. I mean, we're definitely in a situation that I hope that we get a reversal of things, and I think it's great. Ken Niedermeyer started out with growing the corals out, and we started doing all that. That's all cool stuff. I just hope we can keep them alive and come up with some everybody, it's amazing. One little idea, we just get the right one and it kicks in and we can do a lot. So, we want to continue to make a living off the sea, and at the same time, if we don't protect what we have, we won't be able to do that.
You won't have it much
we
longer.
won't have it. And those reefs are very, very important to the lobster grow out, and the grasses, everything. We've been, you just want to cry. If you've been out here when I got involved with the Joint Action Group for Water Quality, we had all these sponge die-offs, and you just basically wanted to cry. It was just like we just had you could take a ladle and just ladle the water. It was just all brown and chocolate milk type, and you turn on the live wells, and the water would just turn into like a washing machine. And so that has cleared up, and now what's happened, we keep getting these seagrass die-offs in Hawks Channel in particular. Like in a deeper part of the channel, you just see it turned into like the Mojave Desert. And after the hurricane that came, washed through, I hope that they say that it washes out. So maybe in a few years we'll see some positive effects from maybe the hurricane cleaning out and getting rid of the silt and so on and so forth. That's what the idea of hurricanes in general is, to kind of clean out things. Haven't seen that yet, but hopefully we will start seeing something positive. Yeah. I'm an optimist. If you do what we do for a living, you got to get up every morning and think, I'm going to go catch lobsters. I don't even think I'm going to. I just know I'm going to go catch lobsters and stone crabs. I don't know how many, but if not, why get up?
Right. So how was this season compared to last season? Was it?
Well, last season we had a pretty darn good lobster season, and this year we're having a pretty darn poor lobster season. Some people are doing better than others. Our family's been very fortunate. We've had a fair season, but it's getting worse as we go here on the lobster. And I really believe the hypothesis that myself and a few of our peers have come up with is that we're fishing on about a 2-year cycle for the lobster to grow to a legal size, from the larvae stage up to a legal size, and we're fishing on that Hurricane Irma here. So everything got hit really hard. If everything that was supposed to settle out into those shallow waters got just washed all over the place, it may take another year for us to come back. We're seeing a lot of shorts, but we're not seeing a lot of the big lobsters. Right. And I think that all has a lot to do with what happened with Irma. We don't know what's happening with stone crab, other than we're probably still recuperating from all the algae blooms, and it's too early to tell with the stone crab. We started crabbing the last 3 days. We've crabbed, and we're pulling about 800 to 1,000 traps a day per boat, and we're catching about a quarter of a pound of crabs per trap to a third of a pound. Our normal average for this time, our normal beginnings in the last 47 years I've been doing this, you're usually doing at least a pound a trap to, 3/4 of a pound a trap. Meaning, if you pull 1,000 traps, you're going to get 1,000 pounds of stone crabs. We're getting about 200 pounds of stone crabs, so it's not very profitable. The prices are up a little bit, but it's still a little early. We haven't had any cold fronts. We haven't had the weather, and the stone crab is a weird thing. We are seeing. I'm seeing something real positive in the stone crabbing versus last year. I'm not seeing a lot of empty traps. I'm seeing, and not a lot of areas where there aren't any crabs. We're seeing a lot of little fish and things in the water. The water quality isn't so bad. And we are seeing crabs in all the lines, so there are crabs down there. It may just take some weather to move them around a little more. Okay. And we're coming up with enough crab to pay to go out. But it's if we go another month and we don't start seeing crabs, I think our guys are, we're all financially in some pretty dire straits. A lot of our industry and our fishermen, it's you got to have a good year after. You have a couple of bad years. You need to have one good year at least out of 3 or so.
Right.
It's been tough. And my son-in-law, he's a young guy. A lot of these there's quite a bit of turnover in the last few years with some young people buying into the industry, and it's got to be extremely tough on those guys because they got big bills to pay and they have to pay off their business. Thank God I've been in business for a long, long time, and we have bought our business and have it paid for. If we had to pay for something
brand new, that would be tough.
It's going to be really tough. It's like paying a mortgage on a house you bought when you don't have anything coming in to pay for it. So
they're probably optimistic with the previous season being so well, and then
everybody just hang in there. It's the law of averages. We're going to have a good year. So it may be still coming this year, and I think we'll be fine. Lobstering's been very stable over 30 years, and the last 30 or 40 years of landings are very, very stable, and we've actually voted up our quota for our ACL for catching lobsters, because we were we were catching more than what we were catching, and we've been on an upswing, and then we got hit with this hurricane. So I think it's just a matter of a short time to get things back equalized from the environmental damage that was done by the hurricane.
Sure. Okay, so let's recap a little bit on the so with the sanctuary. So you believe overall that this is something we need or don't need?
The sanctuary itself, we've learned to live with it, and it's very important. I think that it's unique. I mean, and we're all surviving, living in a sanctuary, and we have some protections. We have a lot of the little spa areas, and we have some big closed areas. We have a lot of penny camp that's closed, and we have a lot of the really prolific coral reefs that we're protecting. And I think it's still important. There's still some other areas where the corals are that they're talking about, some of these spas that are important, maybe some of the shallow water habitat, these flats, to protect.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's all good. It's just how far do you go and balance, what you're going to accomplish with the detriment to the economics of things. And you can't just keep take, and then 5 years from now we get another group of biologists or administrators that want to, because they got a new job, need to prove that they have the job and they have to do something to accomplish something. We can't just keep doing that, because eventually the user groups, whether it's the commercial divers, the commercial fishermen, the commercial hook and line fishermen, the commercial charter boats, you can't just keep taking. I think we need to protect what we need to protect and keep it protected,
right,
and kind of leave us doing our thing. And if we see something we're doing wrong, then let us change something, but just to justify job security or something, I think there's some things that, and I believe that if you take a job like Sarah, you have to be very dedicated and to what you do, and you have to believe in it. So I believe that everybody believes that they're doing it for a
noble cause down the road, but
reason. But I think there's an overkill of that, and I think what's happening with it, which I think the crux of everything is, we've always, as a commercial fishing industry, the recreational industry, the charter boat industry, the dive industry, we've always been included in the development stage of all of these plants. This is the first one. We're coming out. This is the second time in 5 years we're going, and we're going to beat our head against the wall. We're going to just get what they're throwing on a paper, and we're going to all have to react to it. Why weren't we sitting down together and drawing up these charts and maps and trying to show them, trying to work together to come up with something that we could actually do to accomplish together to protect something that we all, being as we use these resources, could get together and find a common ground here of things, and then we could go outside the box maybe.
Right.
I mean, if you just want to be radical and close an area from the shoreline out to 100 feet of water, because that's an idea that you have that you think is a good idea. And we can't to this day get the guy to come forward and say, hey, this is the guy that did this. We don't know who did that, but they're doing it. And why? The why thereof is because we want to, because it's an idea, really, and we can't afford that.
Right. So I think we're going to start doing, like you said, Sarah's been very receptive of ideas, and she's really, my opinion is that she's very open to listening to what people say, and they're going to take that into account.
She's just jumping into that boat, and it's tough. I mean, golly. I'll tell you what, it's really great having new blood. Even in our industry, I said, you can't have, I'm almost 63, and I've been doing this since I was 16 years old. I've been commercial fishing most of my life, and you have to have new blood. And she has the fire, and she has the new ideas. It's always good to have new people and new ideas, and from talking to her, I was very, very impressed. And it's Bill Causey, I've known him really good. He's been a friend of mine. I've known him for a lot of years, and he did a lot of good things, and he helped get us off the ground with the sanctuary process. But it's time for the change of guard and the change of things. And Sarah, hopefully we can get her to work with the different user groups, in particular since I'm a commercial fisherman with OFF and Florida Keys Commercial Fisherman, before some of this stuff comes to the table and gets everybody, I mean, I don't know why we want to get, well, when we say tourist, it's not really tourist. I mean, you have the snowbirds, you might want to call them, but
Right.
the snowbirds own a considerable amount of property here. And they fish, they come down here, they've worked all their lives, a lot of them are fairly affluent, and they have beautiful homes in our neighborhoods. They come down, they're not here right now. So, and they don't even, they can't even defend what they spent all their money
Right.
to be here for. If they can't go fishing on some of the areas, it would be kind of nice, hopefully by the winter time when we have this procedure, what we're going through, the process that we're involved in, some of them can get involved in it and put in their 2 cents also. But I just think of all the people that aren't here right now, because this is the summertime and there aren't any.
Right. They pay taxes and they should have a voice in
Pay
what
taxes and probably pay a lot
what's
more
going
money.
on.
Make a lot more money than I make, for
Right.
sure.
I get
Above
that.
my pay grade. But,
Right.
it's just important that all the user groups get, a time to react, respond, and and be educated. I just get something shoved down their throats or whatever. I'm just waiting to see how this all evolves, because this was all new. This is all new to us. I mean, I went to the meeting the other night, and I was actually a little misinformed about an area back there in the Bayside, and so we're still working on that. So we'll see. I'm trying to educate myself. I was hoping at the meeting they would have actually had charts on the screen, and they could zoom in on them and show us, because it's a little bit hard. I'm using the app on the phone and
Yeah,
you're
they pretty
trying
much
to use a chart.
showed us the same thing where you couldn't see really the real detail.
You at least ought to have some raster charts that are really good, or even a regular Garmin chart, or any kind of a lot better charting than what I see, to show the areas and be more defined and showing people, because you're just showing it on a big screen, and the lay people aren't going to go home and get the computer out and try to play with the fingers and figure out how to zoom in. I literally have played with this myself, and it's very difficult to maneuver through this. It would be nice if they just put the charts on a big screen and you could actually just see it. I mean, it's not that complicated.
No, I thought they should have also showed the actual condition. Well, not even that the condition the coral is or the sea bottom is in those different areas. Say this is why we're trying to protect these specific areas, because look at here's the damage that's been done and we want to restore it. Or that would have given people, I think, a better visual perspective of.
That'd be helpful. They did have off of Marathon. They showed some of the scarring and stuff from the aerial footage and stuff, and that was good. I mean, but there's a lot of people using our waters, and a lot of years have gone by, and for all the changes that I see, I still don't. We've been just trying to put money, freshwater flow to the Everglades for I think it was back in the late 80s, I believe, when we started doing the Joint Action Group for water quality. And George Barley, his wife, we got the Everglades Association. Then we have Mike Forrester up there. He tried to get some stuff going with the freshwater flow restoration. And those things, we get these started, but to my knowledge, we've got very little freshwater flow restored to this day. And that's something, and if anything, we've gone backwards. I mean, you look at what's happened up in West Palm Beach and on the East Coast, it's incredible. The algae blooms that have come even before the hurricane. So I think, if anything, the hurricane probably did help. It seems to have washed some of that away, and you're not hearing as much about that. That's devastating. So, so this is all filtering downhill to us, and so, it's important that everybody, our children and our children's children and ourselves stay involved and try to do what we can, our little bit to help. And, anyway, our industry, one thing is of anything, we have to be the most conservation-minded people in general, because we're totally dependent on our living that comes from the sea. And it's not like we're getting a tourist on our boat that's paying us to go fishing. We have to have the lobsters or the crabs in the water, and we have to protect that habitat. Like farmers, we have to have that seed so that we can have the ability to make a living. Our living comes 100% from if we don't taking care of our habitat. So it's a little bit different perspective than going out playing to go dive up a lobster or go play to catch a fish. We have to pay our bills and keep our families fed, our children fed, and keep them in school, keep them in clothes, so on and so forth.
Right.
So are you, so overall, are you optimistic about what the outcome, or you think that, like a lot of people think they're just going to do whatever they want anyway?
I've been involved in the process. We were the first fisherman-derived limited entry system in the United States with Spiny lobster fishery. And I lobbied every state senator and every state representative, and I went to Tallahassee about 30 times. And if I went, I've never been a negative person or had a negative attitude. So I think I've seen there, we can change. One person could have made a phone call, and I learned that from this process. One person and 10 people definitely would have probably changed the legislators' minds by just making phone calls and getting involved. We could have killed the bill. Someone could have killed easily the bill to have limited entry. We've reduced our traps from 1 million lobster traps down to 400,000. We're down to about 450,000 lobster traps, and we've maintained the same amount of production. And John Hunt actually was in agreement with us. We went with the biological ends. We accomplished the biological ends, and they accepted our reduction in traps to. We've actually had a lot less detriment on the environment. Stone crabs, we're going from 2 million, we're already down to 1 million. We started out with 2 million traps, we're down to 1 million. Our end point on that's about 600,000. Our end point on the lobster fishery is about 400,000. So we're still in a reduction stage on both. We have it's called passive reduction, meaning as you buy and sell the certificates, which is like a piece of stock to own a trap, the traps get reduced. So we are actively reducing our industry and the amount of gear that we put in the water on the habitat, as we go right now. We'll be doing that probably for the next 10, 15 years anyway. So we're doing our part, and we have the most highly regulated fisheries in the world, and it's been a very strong and stable fishery. We unfortunately can't control environmental factors, hurricanes and things like that, but we can get involved with this water quality thing. We can make sure that people don't run aground as much as possible. And we can protect these little coral areas where the lobsters need to spawn and so on and so forth.
Okay, here we go.
And I know we can make a difference, but we need to combine our efforts, not just, we don't need to beat against each other. We need to work together. We need to work together as a community. We need to work together with our fisheries managers, and they need to listen to us, and we need to listen to them at times. And there's usually a compromise. Normally, if you talk to the everyday person that's been involved in fisheries, most of the guys that's been involved with me in Organized Fishermen of Florida are Florida Keys commercial fishermen, Jerry Sampson, Bill Kelly, awesome executive directors. They do a wonderful job and they're very knowledgeable about all this. Usually, everybody asks for a lot knowing that they're not going to get everything they ask for, but they know if they ask for a lot, they're going to get something. So that's kind of where this is probably going. They're going to get something, and hopefully the something they get is going to be the thing that actually needs to be protected. And I see some of these areas, and I'm in 100% agreement with some of these small areas. I don't think our industry's ever been against protecting these small areas and the coral areas that you come out, they were talking about regulating. I'm around Sombrero Light trap pulling a lot, and you see the amount of density of boats. I think they've got to come up with a max density, because you can't, someone's going to get hurt. Sometimes on the holiday weekends you have 1,000 people trying to vie for position. I think they're going to have to come up with some idea as to sign up for X amount of users can be used in a place at one time. A lot of places they don't have that, but where they're having a density problem, obviously they have to come up with some ideas for some of these things. These are new things not seen before, so who would ever thought that we would just overlove something?
Too many people want to come out. I've been out there on a boat, and I agree. There's too many people swimming around here.
You just got to overlove it or something.
So you can't really enjoy it because all you're looking at is people's fins and legs.
Exactly. So some kind of an idea. But again, I'm sure that the dive industry could sit down and come up with some ideas, and the regular recreational divers that use the area can come up and sit down with some ideas, and before just, I guess they're throwing this out, and maybe that's where we're going. We're going to have a bunch of input and whatever, but we need to get the one-on-one input.
Right.
The giant meetings. First of all, we've come to these meetings. I don't have a lot of time. We had last night was opening. The 15th was opening day of stone crab season, and we leave the dock at 4 a.m, and we get in 6, 7 o'clock at night, and we're having the first night of public testimony to testify. We were the night before putting out our crab traps when we're going to the other meetings that we had on to just listen to get it, and we couldn't speak at all, and we didn't even have that many people. So we need more opportunity to speak and to be able to get some one-on-one with these people at meetings, and they did not give us, if you look at a position paper that Florida Keys Commercial Fishermen came out with, we did not get very much of an opportunity to speak on these things, and we don't have much time for public testimony, and we need time. We need some one-on-one time. We need our industry, our representatives, and ourselves to be able to sit down with the sanctuary managers at some point.
So you think we can all get along and work together?
We will do it. It'll happen.
I
We
guess
might
so.
have to beat ourselves heads against the
Right.
wall a little bit before it happens, but it will happen eventually. If not, we'll all take the money that we work so hard for with seafood festivals and all, we'll be finding some high-profile lawyers, and we'll have to sue somebody pretty hard, because there's a point. I mean, there's a point here. If if we can't work it out, that's why people go to school to become lawyers, I guess.
Right.
And that's why our fishermen have to dig into their pockets some more and start fighting another battle on another front, because we can't. This is life and death for us. We have to make a living. We have to eat. We have to feed our families. So if too much gets taken away, we'll have to do what we have. It's kind of like unfortunately during the net ban, we used every bit of resource we had. We had 2,000 commercial fishermen in the state of Florida. After the net ban and Organized Fishermen of Florida, I was president at the time. We had 2,000 members. After the net ban, we had 300 members. We had over 2,000 fishermen, commercial fishermen, and we went down to 300 or 400. So it was quite devastating. And we took the smallest little fishermen in the world, pretty much, and that's the ones that were left. They were showing turtles in nets and giant drift nets out in the ocean, and we were talking about inshore fisheries. Again, it was unfortunate that commercial fishermen didn't get together beforehand, working with managers a little bit and do some compromising. But at the time, the fishermen at the time in our organization was all for no compromise. I think we learned from that, so we don't know, we all have to kind of give and take, and we've been able to accomplish some really great things with the lobster certificate program and the stone crab certificate program, and we're still tweaking that. We're coming up with something with stone crabs that's kind of interest. We're coming up with in the next 5 years, an escape ring that's going to go in the stone crab trap to let the small stone crabs out. And we're trying to get that to be implemented in the next 5 years. We've been working on developing the actual ring that we're going to use. So just FYI for anybody out there, our industry is proactive even without having to be proactive sometimes. And if it's going to help the small crabs get out and not be stressed out in the trap, so be it.
Great. So do you think that what you've already done, you could self-regulate the industry? You don't need to have input like the sanctuary to block these areas off, that we can do it ourselves without a mandatory rules?
I think the sanctuary is going to be here, and it has to. We can't do it on our own, because we probably wouldn't do anything if we have to do it on our own. But I think it's just like anything. We're all procrastinators, so unless something drives us, we're not going to do a whole hell of a lot of anything. On the front of making your living on the sea, we have to be proactive, because if we don't, we're not going to make a living. It's kind of like a farmer, I guess, with the different kinds of seeds and fertilizers that he uses. He's got to know what he's doing, and he can't have a bunch of weeds running over, a bunch of animals that eat up, insects, whatever. So I don't know that much about farming, obviously, but I do know a little bit about fishing, and there's a lot more to it than meets the eye. I think education is as important on us. We invite the Marine patrolmen to go on our boats to see what we do, because there's some things here in regulations that we've had a little bit of issues here lately. We've got some real stringent fines for people, felony charges for a lot of things, but there's some gray areas that we need to work on. So we work with law enforcement, and they get on our boats, and we help educate them, and they help educate us, and see what they need. We work with them if we're getting robbed in an area. It's important that the fishermen call in, because they can't do their job without our help. and we can't get our traps from getting robbed if we don't ask them for help. So it's a symbiotic relationship with the FWC on that. Same thing with this. If the sanctuary people would work with us, they're going to get a lot more accomplished that will help our industry, their sanctuary, and the everyday person. So it's just a matter of communication. We put those people on our boats or on the boats, whether it's the dive boats, the commercial lobster fishermen, crabbers, the charter boat guys. Get them on all different user boats and get some perspectives from the other user groups also. Don't just use us for one. But
Right.
being as we're on the water, I mean, when you look at it from the standpoint of hours on the water, I'm on the water pretty much from 6 o'clock during lobster days till from 6, at least 12 hours a day most of the time.
Wow.
And most of the time it's 7 days a week, 6 days on a minimum from August until May. So that's a lot of days on the water. And then in the summers, I love to dive and fish with my family. So we go fishing whenever we can.
Right.
So the amount of hours that we have at the disposal and the knowledge that we have is quite incredible when you think of it. You calculate the amount of hours that we're putting on the water and the amount of knowledge that these commercial fishermen have. So they can utilize that knowledge to help. It would be a lot better than just taking the pin the tail on the donkey or
Right.
taking a dartboard and putting a chart up and throwing a dart at it.
Just guessing. Okay. So anything else you would like to add that we haven't talked about?
No, I appreciate it. I trust in our leaders. You know, one thing is you got to pray for your leaders. So I pray for the sanctuary managers to make the right decisions and to come forward and help us come up with a plan that will work for all the user groups and really maybe refocus some of the energy into the habitat and into the water quality, because without water quality we're not going to have a reef at all, and we really need to double up our efforts, quadruple it up. If the sanctuary ever did anything, we need to take that money that we're using and somehow get an answer to getting fresh water flow restored. I mean, clean fresh water into that bay. And then I think we will solve a lot more of our problems than just this. I mean, and let's protect the corals that we have left. Obviously, we want that for our children, our children's children. And I'm not going to be on this earth, you know, probably 25, 30 years. The longer the better. But you know, we'll be passing the baton, and I'm sure that you have a little girl I just saw running around here, and I have a new one. Shoot, now it's a month old. I have little Morgan here. You know, shout out to Morgan, my little grandson. And so, you know, we have a 1-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 1-month-old running around right now, and grandchildren, and they all love the water. Well, all of our kids and my grandchildren. One thing is, FYI, all of our children, part of the Nichols crew tradition is they have to get on the water before they're a week old. So we've accomplished that from the Nichols crew since my wife Beth and I have been. Like I said, we started our fishing business when she was 15 and I was 16.
That's great. Okay, so people to stop the panic, or not just yet?
No panic.
No panic, people.
No, don't panic. Just get involved and
Get all the information. And
I only went to one meeting in my life and called somebody a really bad name, and it was at the 5 years ago when I saw the same zone that they have from Long Key to Long Key Bridge to Channel 5, and I told them that they were something started with an A and the second word was an H, but all one word. But anyway, I never normally like to do that, but sometimes you just gotta say, come on.
Wake up, people.
Wake up, people. It's America, you know.
Okay, great. Well, I really appreciate you coming out. There's a lot of good information to share with everybody. And give me education.
Well, I appreciate it, and anytime we can get some help from the media in particular, anytime you need anything, I'll be glad to help you. I'm sorry I'm so long-winded.
Oh, that's okay. That's great.
Sure you're going to edit out a lot, I hope, I'm sure.
No, using it all. No, it's been great. I really appreciate your time. I know you're busy.
All right. A little tired.
A long day to share your information with us. And
it's all good.
I really appreciate it. So,
all right.
Thank you.
Take care. Thank you.